And we are live, I think. Let me check. Oh, look at that. We're live. We're live tonight. I'm live with Sara Burton. You say hello to everybody.
Ah,
And tonight we're going to be talking about her book. And as soon as I can pull up my questions, because I forgot. There we go. So don't forget that this is live. So if you have anything you'd like to ask her, feel free to leave it in the chat. So I suppose that is not the right screen. There we go. I suppose we can get started with, can you tell us a little bit about your book, Cherry Trail? It sounds like it's going to be a series, right?
it is, yeah. So it's Cherry Trail, a story from Havenburg. It's the first book in the series, first book that I wrote and finished my manuscript. So that's an achievement. But yeah, it's my debut. It's super sweet. It's kind of just setting the tone for what's to come. All of my books are, I shouldn't say all of them, but they're very like nostalgic. They're coming of age. I thought I was a romance writer. It's definitely more lit romance, lit fiction.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's just the first one. It's kind of, again, setting the stage for my world that I've created that just keeps growing and growing. And now there's going to be 3 series inside of my one world. So,
Okay, that's how it goes.
yes.
Um, so it re-released last week or the week before. It was on the 24th, was it?
The 24th of May.
Why did you decide to re-release the book?
Um, so when I finished it last year, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing at all. Like I knew nothing. I just was like, "Oh, hey, KDP, let's you like publish a book. Why not? Sure, do it. Do it. Just go for it." And I knew nothing, and it was in not great condition. I mean, it wasn't like the worst thing you probably would have read, but it was not. Like I always joke, it wasn't like fit for human consumption quite yet. But I and like there's like a whole story to it because part of the issue was I was going through an undiagnosed 6 month roughly manic episode. So there was a lot of just, impulsive decision making. And I was like so excited that I finished it and I just threw it on out there. And then I think it was so after I actually decided to admit myself to inpatient and get the help that I needed. And when I came out, I'm like, no, this is not something I'm proud of. This is not what I want it to be. And so I pulled it and like, well, let's just work on it. And then I rewrote the entire thing from first person to third person limited. So that took some time.
Well, I
And
bet.
yeah, and then I just kind of kept chipping away at it. And I met Laura, who, she's part of the group, and
Mm.
Laura Thompson. And so she kind of helped me. She edited, or we edited together. And we got to a point and I was like I told him like I need to give it back for a second. Like I need it for a second. And I basically just kind of like did my last overhaul and I'm finally proud of it. And then it was to the point where I'm like, can we get this out for Mental Health Awareness Month? Because that's like the whole story behind this.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what we shot for. And we did it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
My first book, I love my first book, but I'm definitely going to be doing a remastered version after, because I published mine in, was it November or December last year? No, it had to be before then, because I took the Readsy Master class of how to write a novel. Well, after about 101 classes of that, I realized that I'm going to have to redo this. So I'm going to be doing a remastered version. So I completely get it. But like
Yeah. And it's just the excitement of finishing, right?
um, yeah. And I can look at that bookshelf and see that I have a book with my name on the spine. That's one of the big things that I did or was so excited for. So you go by SMR Burton. Was there a particular reason, or is it like kind of like a pen name? Or
So, I just, like, the initial published books under my name, and I kind of was like, I don't know, I feel like I don't know, I wasn't like, and on my socials, it always, because I was very, like, before last September, I was non-existent on social media. You couldn't find me. I purposely did it that way. My name was Sarah Michelle Rebecca.
Mm.
Like anywhere that I was, so I'm like, well, nobody who doesn't know, like, if it, you can't search me by my last name. I was like incognito. Well, one of my really early on Threads friends, he made a comment when we first started chatting, and he was like, "Oh, she who has three names," and it stuck. So then when I was like, "Well, I think I want to use kind of like a pen name or a different," and I was like, "So do I just do SM Burton?" And then he's like, "No, you got to do SMR Burton because it's like she who has three names. So like put it all in your book." And I was
Nice.
like, "All right." So that's where, and I'm like, and it's a fun story behind it.
Well, whatever works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tried Googling more information about you. When I put in Sarah Burton writer, you were the first one that came up from, I think it was Amazon that came up first. And then a
Oh.
Sarah with an H came up afterwards, and she looks like she's much older. So I'm like, that is definitely not the one I was looking for.
That's another reason I was like, ooh, I should change it, because even though she's got an H, I'm like, she's written quite a few books. She's pretty like established. I'm like, yeah, I don't want it to be that close. So that was another, like, that's kind of what triggered me to change it. And then my friends helped me decide, like, what do we want to go with?
Well, yeah, that works. Um, you could play into that whole misspelling traffic thing, because that's how a lot of people do with their websites, is that they purposely misspell stuff to redirect to their own site. So anyway,
I know that's
Black Hat SEO. Anywho,
I'm just learning.
you are a mental health warrior. Is there any one instance that prompted you, or was it more of a natural progression throughout life?
Um, there's
I
a
kind of know a little bit of the
it's
answer to
kind of
this already, but
Yeah, it's been a progression. When I was younger, I mean, I've been dealing with depression since I was in eighth grade. Didn't really, you know, grasp it. It was a really, getting through high school was a struggle. Definitely really hard. I The first time I went to inpatient was when I was in high school, and there's just a lot that I kind of learned after that. And then, I mean, I've been in therapy for 20 plus years. It's just kind of, as the progression went, I've I always I was never like terrified to talk about it, but I was very selective who I talked about it with. And then I had a really close call with someone who's very, very important to me.
Mhm.
And that kind of was one of those, like, well, he, I mean, people feel alone, and you don't necessarily think that. Like, you see them, and even me and him, like, we joke that we have this like on persona, and people
Mhm.
would never think, like, when you tell them how much you've struggled and that you're an attempt survivor, they look at you like there's no way. So for me, it kind of just started to dawn on me. It's like, well, there are people out there like me who feel like me, and they just kind of are, so it's like, we need to talk about it more, and it's really important. And then i I lost somebody, the like Christmas of 2019, go right into going into 2020. And that has like really heavily stuck with me. And as I kind of mentioned, that I had that like break last year, it got to the point where I was sitting talking to my husband, and I said, if this is how she felt, like, if, like, it's a warning sign. I'm like, I don't have a plan. I'm not saying I'm there, but I'm like, if this is the point she felt that before she made her decision, I'm like, this is my warning sign. Like, we need to do something. And after that, that's when it really solidified in my mind. Like, I need to talk about this. Because not that we didn't, well, we really didn't know this, how severe her struggle was. And it's just kind of like, how many of us can put ourselves out there and say, hey, if you're having a bad day, like, I'm here. And I do that. I mean, there's so many people that I'm like, I know you may not know me, but if you need to send me a message, and if all it is me helping you find who can help or getting you to the crisis line or whatever we need to do, even if it's just listening, I will be that person. Because I know I could have used that in my youth. So, I mean, at any age, really, because our generation, and I hate to say it, but like we didn't talk about this. We did not talk about these things. So I know that there's still so many people my age or older than me that are like, well, depression's the amount of times I've heard depression's not a real thing, like it's laziness or whatever. Their stigma still is like really strong, and I just want to be one part of breaking that down and letting everybody know, hey, it's okay to talk about these things.
Yeah. That is a laudable goal. That's one thing I try to do for everybody. In fact, a lot of people, not a lot, but I've met a few people from my viewers and chat with them through Discord and whatnot. So I get it. Um, I do have had people, I've lost people, and I still think there could be so much more done. One person I lost was mostly because of the drugs he was doing, and they messed him up really good. And he put a shotgun to his head, and that one was. I still have issues trying to get past that, but I know that he wasn't. That wasn't my brother. That was somebody else, and it just. I don't know. It affects you, and I think more people should put more effort into being a mental health warrior,
Yeah.
because we definitely need it. Um, what the hell? My dog just smashed into my door. I have a new. Nope, nope. Hold on. Give me that.
Yep.
Nope. Not a brand. Go, go play. Ready? Go get it. She sit there and looks at. No, I'm trying to do it. Come on, out, 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 out. Keep going. Keep going. Get out of my house. I have a puppy bulldog who just blasted through the door. Anyway, continuing on. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so you've written quite a few blog posts regarding mental health. I read quite a few, or I read a couple of them. And a recent one stated how sharing helps you heal. I think this was back in November that you wrote. Maybe it was January. It's one of the ones I read. And how therapeutic do you find your writing? I know writing 7 on one of my books on Wattpad was quite therapeutic for me, although I wound up killing most of the people in it. So it's one of those getting the anger out. How often do you find writing therapeutic for you?
It's probably my biggest outlet right now. I went 10 years without writing anything, and it's having that realization hit me really hard because part of how I survived high school and my early writing, I mostly wrote poetry, just like short stories and stuff. I started a few books, but that's what I did to kind of cope and just get my feelings out there. And so the fact that I went 10 years without doing it really like weighs heavy on my chest because I just kind of wonder like what. Hold on a second, because now I've got. I'm sorry, I apologize. So mute this because we've got.
That's all good. I just had Facebook blast us all in the ear. But you know, it wouldn't be one of my shows without things going wrong. I can't think of a single show where something didn't explode on me. Or like right before today's show, the internet went out. Well, that's because the power switch going into the router was too loose, and it just kind of. Luckily, I just had to plug it back in. How's it going, Diana? How's it going, KDC? So how you guys like the view of my office? Instead of being able to zoom in like I can with the videos, Discord doesn't let me do that with the camera. So y'all get to see everything in my office. It is what it is.
I am so sorry.
Oh, no
They
problem.
were all like, they were all tucked in and ready for bed, and then I don't know.
Yep, I've had
Oh,
my share. My youngest is
yeah, I don't
17.
know.
Has anybody
But
thrown up on your back yet?
well, like little when they were babies, yeah. I mean, but not like this. We've been really lucky that we've not had a lot of illness.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna knock on wood because I'm gonna jinx it, but yeah, we've been lucky. But yeah, I don't know. You know, it's like one of those things. Like usually they're like in bed, quiet, calm, chill, and
Okay.
I have no idea. I really don't know what just happened with him.
It's all good.
So my apologies.
Oh, no problem. Hey, life happens. I say
Yeah.
sorry quite often. Like I said, it wouldn't be a show of mine if something didn't backfire, break, blow up, or disconnect. So
Oh,
luckily I got
oh,
rid of
there's like definitely.
Comcast.
Um, we
But
don't
anyway,
have an option where I live. It's like you get like kind of out there. So wherever whatever lines are ran by your house, that's all your option is.
yeah, I had Comcast for a while, and I've hated Comcast since 1998. Um, but as soon as Quantum Fiber laid the fiber optic, I mean, they came up to the door and knocked on it. And they were asking my permission. I'm like, go ahead, lay it right now, hook me up.
Yeah.
Took them a little while, but they got it all ran, and yep, I dropped Comcast in a heartbeat. Now they call me every day, want me to come back. Like, no,
They do that.
you can't pay me enough. Anyway, we were talking about your writing being therapeutic.
Yes. Uh, so yeah, so it definitely is. When I started writing back in January of 2023, I I mean I dove right into writing my book. It's like I didn't even kind of I just woke up one day and started writing it. And as I was writing it was when I started to notice, oh, some of this is coming out. Mostly like my first book features high functioning depression, high functioning anxiety, and severe panic attacks. So that just kind of started showing up in my writing, and it wasn't necessarily intentional. And then it dawned on me, well, anything you write is going to have mental health themes in it because that's your life, that's who you are. And as it progressed, I mean, I thought I was writing one book, and now I have like 10 or 13 books mapped out, and each one's going to have different topics, but they all tie into mental health. And it's as I've been writing that it's become extremely therapeutic because I've been able to touch on things that I thought I had come to terms with that I hadn't maybe necessarily actually come to terms with, and
Yeah, I
it
get
really
it.
helps with that. So
That's good.
yeah.
Um, is there anything outside of writing that helps you center yourself when things get rough, or do you just rely on um, your blogs and books?
I mean, it kind of just depends what what's going on in it. I mean, I have a lot of coping mechanisms. I joke that I have my Mary Poppins bag of like tricks to get me through the bad days. Um, I've noticed too when to not like when if I'm having a depressive low from my bipolar disorder, it's better for me to lean into like cooking, um, more like I don't know. Sometimes I like watercolor, like things that are just a little bit more chill, and it's kind of like I know what I have to do. I don't really need to be creative necessarily to do it. It's just like go for it.
Hmm.
And that was a big thing for me to accept because I wrote for so long. Like last year, I wrote over 500,000 words.
Yeah.
So when I kind of hit a lull, like a few months ago, I was really upset about it. I'm like, well, don't fight it because if you fight it, it's just going to make this so much worse. So I'm really good at figuring out what to do when I'm high and what to do when I'm low and kind of in the middle so that, yeah, I don't burn myself like from both ends and then
Yeah.
end up in a bad
I
place.
I get into gardening. Usually I grow pumpkins every year for whoever wants them. Unfortunately, with the puppy, it's made that impossible. So I don't get to garden this year. I do have blueberries and a strawberry plant that's pretty sad looking at the moment. Still alive. Whatever. I'm gonna grow mint and catnip because they're weeds, and you can grow those just about anywhere.
Yeah,
It's easy.
our mint plant is huge. I was gonna say we do. My husband's more the gardener than I am, but it is very therapeutic to go out there and
Oh yeah,
do that.
it's relaxing. I'm not stressed out. All I got, I'm just pulling out the weeds or making sure the cats aren't getting into it because we have stray cats around and they like to dig up the seeds and crap in the hole. Like, no, cayenne pepper works wonders. Hey Neil, how's it going? Um, so yeah, I guess everybody has a lot of different coping mechanisms. Changing gears a bit, you also dabble a bit in poetry. I read your the one page that you have on your blog. Do you have any plans of writing a book for more poems, or are they just going to reside on your blog?
Probably. I mean, unless somebody were to be like, "Hey, let's do a collaborative thing," and a group of us all put poems together. I don't know that I have enough that I would collectively make a book out of, or do anything like that. And again, that's a lot of just for me, like that's a big outlet. And even a lot of my blog posts, some of them are more what I consider creative journaling. It's a way where I'm like not sitting there and being like, "Dear Sarah," and just kind of letting out my feelings. So even those pieces, people have asked the same thing. I'm like, I don't know. I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I got that when I was reading through them. It seems more of a more journaling. Something I do on some of the websites that I have. I find it therapeutic too. And it helps me get things out that I want to accomplish. So it's almost like trying to do a self-fulfilling prophecy type things, which is why I do a lot of goals. But anywho, you're among the few authors I've had on the show who actually use their TikTok account. Has it been helpful for spreading word regarding your book and what you do? Because I don't know, I haven't had a chance to watch the TikToks, but I did visit your page and saw how many you have. I'm like, wow, she's way more productive than I am. I haven't made a single video yet.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that because I visit my TikTok once in a blue moon. I don't like it. I don't get it. I think that's the better thing. Um, I am such like seriously, I was social media illiterate when I jumped onto Threads, and I'm learning. I definitely am learning, but I really think it's because of just me being like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, and people are like, haha, let's let's throw her a bone and just follow her. But on TikTok, I don't really get a lot of engagement. Luckily I was gonna say I got a couple ARC readers from TikTok that have been super supportive, and one has like tagged my stuff a couple of times. I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. Like she really, really enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
But I just don't think I'm active enough, and I haven't cracked the code, and I don't know that I ever will crack the code.
That's how I feel. Like I created my TikTok account. I've been against TikTok for a long time, but another author finally talked me into creating one. So I went in, created my account, and I'm like, now what? So I haven't made a single video. But Megan Grant, I had her on 2 weeks ago, and she's pretty active on it, and it's been really helpful for her. And I know a lot of authors actually have made some decent sales. One in particular found that if he promotes his book topless, he winds up getting more sales. But he's like, I feel dirty when I do that. So
I mean,
so that was about 4 months ago. And then I saw recently that he went back to doing the topless ads for it. I'm like, yeah, see, you gotta stick with what works.
yeah, not intentionally, but I posted like a couple pictures with, I have like a book, like I'm holding it in my lap, and I had a couple comments. They're like, "Oh, book, like book thirst trap for sure." And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess, hey, if it works, it works. And it wasn't even, the one wasn't even my book. I was taking photos for a friend of mine's book that I was like, yeah, I'll definitely, because I got his signed copy and I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I'll definitely post a thing about it. And then I got a bunch of people commenting. I'm like, huh, okay. So then I did like leg pics from it works. I know Laura and I were joking around about that kind of too, and so, I think she said something about topless. And did you, the person who you're talking about, who's doing the topless book promoting, was he on the show?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so I think I might know who it is. And her and I were
Probably.
talking about this, and I was just kind of like, well, maybe when I have two books, like, but definitely not now.
Yeah, but when he posted
But
that,
yeah, we were just joking
he,
about it.
he posted one about a month ago, and I commented, it's like, oh, going back to the shirtless ones, huh?
Yeah. I mean, whatever works, whatever works. Yeah, but definitely. I mean, I'll post something maybe once a week, maybe every 2 weeks, and I haven't seen a lot of traction. But I do know that I do have friends that have gotten, decent sales, or even just ARC readers, which is really important too. So
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, do I even put in the effort now if it's going to get banned anyway? Or maybe I can figure something
have
out
had
for.
that conversation too.
Yeah.
I mean, but really, you're writing, you're editing. I run a book club or a writers club. And taking editing and proofreading classes. I'm a mom, and then you want me to market my own. I'm an indie author, so I got to market my own books, and you want me to market for like how many platforms? It's like
Yeah.
I can't keep up. I can't.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I point out is that um, some people on social media think that self-publishing is cheating and that it's so easy to get into, but they don't take into consideration the sheer amount of work that goes into publishing a book, especially one that you're proud of. You're writing, you got editing. I've got beta readers, and then there's other rounds of editing. The channel, or not channel, the cover art. Um, then you have marketing, which is the biggest beast of them all, because if nobody knows the book exists, they're not going to buy it. And so, after getting everything else done, and then you're trying to market and you're like exhausted. It's like, I don't want to play around on Twitter.
Yeah, no, it's not fun, and so many of us will sit and we're like, well, I guess I just pick a day of the week and dedicate to making posts, and you'll sit there and you'll like, I will sometimes like, oh, I accomplished so much. It's like 8 posts, and I post once a day. So like that's literally nothing in the grand scheme of things. I'm just like, how do people do this? So I've been really like trying to like look at people's profiles, and I'm like, well, I like how this looks. I like how this looks. And I'm starting to realize trends of just, it's a lot of the same thing. It's a lot of the same thing. And then just putting something new on, the similar stuff. And like, well, if it looks aesthetically pleasing, like maybe I don't need to, bend over backwards coming up with like completely different stuff every other day. So
Yeah.
I'm figuring it out slowly but surely.
Maybe we're just reading too much into it. That's now that you say that, I'm like, what if there's a simpler way? Hi, this is my book. Buy it. Bye.
I mean, that's another thing. I am the worst at like selling my book. Like, people are like, what's your book about? I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I don't want to like push it. And I just am very much, I'm so timid about it. And one of my Threads friends was like, you shouldn't feel that way and just talk about it naturally. Like, he's like, you're here talking about your mental health. So just put in there like, hey, and this is like, I write about my mental health in this book if you want to know more. I'm like, yeah, yeah. And so like, I get that. But my whole thing has kind of been like, well, I guess I'm selling myself and my brand. And even though my brand is like chaos, completely unhinged, I have a lot of people who have stuck around. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going with it, I guess.
Well, got a flow going. That's more than I could say. I just I've never really liked social media. My son pointed out, my 25-year-old pointed out the other day. We were all hanging out in the living room, and I was laying on the beanbag chair, just listening to the kids talk. And he looks over and like, "Are you? Is there something wrong? Are you angry?" Like, no. Why? Because you haven't said anything in a half hour. Like, that's because I have nothing to add. I don't just add stuff for the sake of adding it. And that's how I feel about a lot with social media. Like, I can't just get on Twitter and post whatever the hell's on my head just because. Like, I will respond, I will reply to people, but just throwing something out there is just alien to me, unless you ask me.
I mean, it's funny you say that because there are times where I'm like, well, I should probably make a thread post, and then I go to type something. I'm like, I've got nothing. I really have nothing to say, so I'll delete it and I won't post. I really, unless it's like something that I really want to put out there, and sometimes I'll jump in if somebody's doing a fun, like, where you're quoting somebody else's stuff. Like, I'll jump in because it's fun to see people. Like, there was one that went around, like, people in their, like, on their wedding days, or what, like, we just did one of if you're 30 and older, like, whatever. And
Mm.
it's fun to see everybody's, like, pictures and stuff. But yeah, if I don't have anything to say, or like sometimes if it's a really bad, I mean, that's another thing I'll do. Like, if I'm having a really bad mental health day, I'll just get on there and be like, yeah, guys, I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling it. Like, I'm in it. I'll probably be quiet the next couple of days. Like, I'm not. Don't worry. I'm okay, but I'm just taking a step back. So,
Good times. Oh, I had a question I was going to ask you about something that you brought up that I don't have written down. I completely forgot. You were talking about TikTok. Man, oh, gone. Not a clue. All right. Anyway, move on. Let's see. What has been the greatest challenge for publishing your book outside of marketing, as that is like the most common problem everybody has? What was the biggest thing that slowed you down aside from marketing, and then minus the first run of your book? What was the most difficult in the second re-release?
um, imposter syndrome.
There you go.
Probably like just kind of like the closer we were getting, I'm like, like I'm not a writer. Like, what are you doing? I think probably imposter syndrome is one of the biggest things that all of us are gonna hit because there will be times, and I'm sure you've gone through this too. Like, people can reach out and be like, I fucking love your book. This is amazing. It's great. And 2 days later, you're like, this is shit. I don't know what anybody's talking about. I don't. They're lying. And it's just, I mean, we can't, and it's not shit. Like, they're not. It's just, you can't quiet those voices sometimes. And I think that is the biggest hurdle because I'm also notorious, like, I don't follow through with a lot of things. And this was one thing that I was like, I have to follow through on. Like, I can't not do it. And I can't let because that's the reason I don't. Imposter syndrome is the reason I would start something and be like, this isn't for you. So I had to conquer that. And it's not conquered. It's just we're climbing
Yeah,
slowly.
I'm guilty of that. I have started so many books and then thrown them away. I didn't start really putting effort into it until I became once I became a professional freelance writer. I started in 2012, and even then, when I was starting, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know the first thing about AP style English or SEO, and here I am writing articles for clients. And there's been a few times where I'd read through something I wrote right before I submit it, thought to myself, "Yeah, this is shit. It's coming back. It's going to be come back for revision." Not only did they love the article, they gave me a tip that was worth about twice as much as the article itself. I'm like, wow. So then I started thinking about it. I'm like, it's awfully arrogant to think you know what somebody else is going to like. So every person out there, writing a good book is subjective. Not everybody's going to love every book. Like even your fans, are going to have that one book that they love that you wrote, even if you have 30 or 40 on the shelf. Um, so that's how I adjust to things like imposter syndrome, is knowing that it is subjective and I don't know what everybody likes. All I can really do is control what I write. And so that has empowered me quite a bit in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's what I kind of always point out to everybody is, not everybody is going to love what you write, but you will find your audience. There will be people who enjoy, and relate and connect to your writing. And it's just kind of like having to know, like, and for me, it's like one person. And like, it's like you get like a handful of people who reach out personally and give you those like comments of I've never connected with a book like I connected to yours, and I'm like, and that's enough to keep you going, because I'm like, again, it's like it touched somebody, and I've made some of my closest, like, I mean, like, I met her on Threads and we met in real life now, and she's, because her book spoke to me so much, I'm like, I guarantee you we have a lot in common, and now she's like one of my besties.
Cool.
So
Is that Laura?
no, so Laura, I love Laura to death. She's my girl, man. But
Yeah, she's been
no,
on twice.
Laura. I was gonna say I fucking love Laura, but no, her name's Sarah, and we joke because we're the Sarah variant. So she's the Pacific Northwest variant, I'm the Midwest variant, and yeah, we just connected like so much, and now we might be doing like collaborative projects together. And I mean,
Fun.
I fucking adore her. But I mean, it was her writing, and that's the thing. And that's why, like, again, like, writing is so powerful because it's just these little things that, like, and it's not just writing. I'm like, it's art and creating, and it can really give you that visceral response to something, and then you feel connected to other people, even though you don't know. I didn't know her. I didn't, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I think I could get to know you if you don't think I'm pretty. And like, he's one of my favorite people. So,
That's
and I
awesome.
also think that's the beauty of being an indie writer. Like,
Well,
I would not be opposed to strangers. Like, if somebody, read my book and was like, oh, she's this like little small time indie author, I'm gonna send her a DM on Instagram. I would be like, hell yeah, bring it on. Like, what do you want to talk about? You want to be my friend? Cool. Like, I just think we have that advantage of being like more, I don't know, accessible, I guess. Like,
accepting. Yeah. I can see it. I've met quite a few people that I really enjoy having on. Like I loved having Laura on. She was actually my first guest of the year, and then I had her again about a month and a half later to talk about her new book. And she's a lot of fun to hang out with. And I've met so many interesting people over the years. Even whether I'm a freelancer or doing the blogging stuff at a word camp or as an author, um, it's really cool how you can affect someone. And one of my favorite compliments so far has been from someone on Threads who reviewed my book, and I ain't gonna give it away, but she loved the ending and thought I was a bastard. Like it did exactly
but
what I wanted it to do.
and that's like, that's just it, is like getting those comments that you're like, okay, so it hit, like, it really, and that was somebody, there was something, and I can't even remember, but I'm like, oh, it hit exactly how I wanted it to. I think like her comment was, why are you breaking my heart just to put it back together, just to break it all over again? And I was like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
It's awesome when everything just works out. I was so worried because
Yeah.
I wrote Kingmaker in both first and third person, and so I was really worried about it confusing people. But the way I structured it, um, so far everybody said that it worked great how it was. I'm like, I stressed about that so much. It's like I hope this doesn't confuse people. But when everything hits right, just You feel good about it. Here's a question for you. You're a bit, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call you an introvert necessarily, but a lot of your writing does come off as such. Would you ever consider doing things like those book events or the expos or the what was one that was here in Denver recently that blew up? The conventions where authors will set up their stands and all that. How likely would you be
Yeah.
to do those?
Yeah, so no, I do fully plan to do like especially local book signings, but I have applied, to do bigger conventions. I mean, and again, Sarah and I have kind of applied to some of the same ones, like because we're like, oh, if we do them together.
That'd be fun.
I always joke I'm like an anti-social social butterfly. Like I don't love leaving my house, but when you get me out, when you get me in public, like you would never know that I'm the way. I mean, people are always just like, what do you mean you don't like to hang out with people or you don't like to talk or you don't like to socialize? I'm like, I do. Like once you get me out there, it's just like when I'm home, like cozy. I don't know. Um, so I know that there's a word for it, and I always forget. It's like when you're that combo of introverted and extroverted, and just kind of like right in the middle
Cool.
where
I was
I
I've
am.
always wanted to think about doing some here in Denver, but the last one we had here was such a clusterfuck that a lot of people bashed it on social media. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it either, but it was like blowing up all over the place. It was just very unorganized, and there was like a lot of chaos. Which is also another thing, because it's some of those. It's like $400 to reserve your table. So if it's not going well and your readers aren't able to get into you, it is a lot to lose out on. So it is
Yeah.
definitely something to consider.
Readers Take Denver. That's what it was.
Yes.
Because they called it RTD, and all I can think is RTD is what we call here in Denver. That's our bus and transit system. So like when people are saying RTD this and RTD that, I'm like, what happened to the buses? Like, is the metro line down? What? And then I had to read into it, like, oh, they didn't put much thought into that. You're gonna confuse your locals. Alrighty. Are you working on anything right now other than your? I know you said you had like 13 books planned with your mental health stuff. Um, do you have any plans to like go beyond that, or is the mental health aspect like your sole driving
So
force?
they're all, yeah, I mean, so all my books are probably going to fall into literary romance, literary fiction. I do have a project I'm working on. It's actually probably going to be released in August. Um, and that book might even kind of sway into women's fiction. But yes, all of my books, although they're going to, I mean, there'll be some type of a fiction. They're going to have mental health themes in them. I address a lot of other things too, though. Not just surrounding mental health, but just kind of other things that can tie into your mental well-being. I have so the second book, it's technically the second and third books because they're kind of a duet within my first series. Those cover so like loss of a parent, loss of a child, um, let's see, alcohol abuse, addiction, toxic relationships, I'm trying to like suicide, self-harm. So I really get in there. My book that'll be coming out in August covers heavily covers bipolar disorder. It also covers an abusive and toxic relationship, as well as self harm and like anxiety and depression.
Mm.
So that one, that one's actually probably going to be the most intense book, at least for a bit. It's kind of I get up in there, I guess is the best way to put it. And not in a bad way. Like all of my beta readers, some of my alpha readers for that one, a lot of the feedback was I've never read a book that quite goes into the mental health. Like I depict like a manic break. In my first book, I go deep into detail of a panic attack that leaves the main character essentially like catatonic. And
Mm.
they're like, I've never really read anything that's like really you're diving in and kind of showing like each different step of like, well, sometimes it's like this and sometimes it's like that. And I try to cover all of that. And I know you before we kind of got on, we'd mentioned like the motherhood stuff. I do have a book coming out that'll be all about, again, so miscarriage, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, which a lot of people aren't even familiar with, and then just the struggles of being a mom after you've gone through. I mean, some women go through postpartum depression for 3 to 4 years, and a lot of people don't think that that's a real thing, but it 100% is.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yep, I know a couple that went through it. In fact, my mom went through it. Not with me, of course. I wouldn't remember. But yeah, I was there when she went through it with, I think, my sister. But yeah, have you ever had troubles writing certain scenes? Like when I wrote Seven, um, one of them was I wrote it centered on domestic violence, and I kind of went a little deep into the whole violence part. Spoiler alert: the guy gets his ass handed to him. But um, when I wrote it, I sat back in my chair, thinking to myself, "What the fuck is wrong with me?" Like, have you ever had those moments where you're like unsure if you could finish it because of just how graphic you're getting, or did you reel back?
um, so no, I mean, I have probably the most intense scene that I've written, and it won't, it's in a book that won't be out for a little bit, but is talking about a like toxic semi-abusive relationship, and it's basically he's like drugged out of his mind, and essentially, I mean, and again, this is a struggle for me because I went through this, and took a really long time to put the word rape to the action, because I'm like, well, we loved each other, right? Like that, it's really hard. Um, and I've dealt with that a lot, like in the last year, especially. But I wrote that scene, and I can specifically remember, like the specific one I was referencing, like I can remember the tears falling down my cheeks and focusing in on that versus what was actually happening. And then after the fact, going and getting to the point where I was like so worked up and realizing how bad the situation was that I self harmed. And that scene, I had to break it up. Like I started writing it and I got to the point that I was like sobbing. So I stopped. And then I went back and wrote the other part of it. That was that was probably the hardest, but I did get through it. I think the only other one is I do go really close into like a, it's not necessarily a suicide attempt, but just like kind of that frame of mind you get to right
Mm.
before, and then needing like that break before needing help. And that was another one, especially because I just went through getting to the point where I'm like, if we don't get me help, I am going to get to the point that I'm about to break. So that was difficult. Um, but yeah, those are probably like the hardest ones I've had to write, and I made it. If you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, no, I don't think I would have been able to do it. I would have just crumbled into like a pile on the floor. But
Well, congrats, you're doing better.
yes.
But yeah, so there were times where I couldn't like that one scene. But then there's then there's some things where how about a scene where it's not necessarily violent or a mental issue, but more like something beyond grotesque that you described like to the T. And yeah, again, ask yourself what the hell's wrong with you. I wrote in Seven again, gluttony. And for those of you who haven't read Seven yet, I suggest you read Gluttony. It's my favorite chapter. But I went beyond gross with it. And have you ever had those moments where you're not necessarily upset about it, but more about upset about your imagination creating it?
This is a good question, actually, because I was like, I'm a really little romance writer. Like, yeah, that's it. And then a really, really good friend of mine was like, I bet you could go dark. I bet you could like do a little bit more. I'm like, no, there's no way. And then I'm sure you're familiar on Discord. There's that like little peach when somebody joins your Discord group. That's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so we made a joke about it, like this, like we called it the angry peach. And then one of the girls in my group turned it into this like like murder looking, like raging mad peach. They're like, why are you calling it like a serial killer peach? So it went on this whole tangent of, well, what do we do with this murderous peach? And then me and Chris in 24 hours wrote a short story based on this idea of like a serial killing peach. But like it totally ventured off. Like it's not about an actual peach serial killer, but it is about a serial killer. And we went there. There's like blood play. It's dark. And I'm like, I did, and he was like, and you wrote it. He's like, because he's a horror writer. He writes like horror and stuff, and I don't. And he was like, you wrote those parts. He's like, that wasn't even me. He's like, I handled like the death and like he's like, you went there with the other stuff, and I'm like, so yes,
Yeah.
I have had that moment where I'm like, ooh, girl, how'd you get here?
I'm a bit darker than I thought I was.
Yeah,
I astonish myself sometimes. Like I'll finish writing something and yeah, the first thing that goes through my mind is I need a vacation. There's something wrong with me. So
and
I
I
think
personally think like, hey, we're writing it out. That's better. Like, let's
yeah,
write, get the thoughts onto paper.
I think most writers have, or at least most fiction writers, um, have to view themselves like they have some kind of disorder. Like when I was telling, talking to my son, he was interested in writing, and one of the comments made to him, and I think I made it on the show before, was being a being an author is kind of like having multiple personality disorder because you're trying to um, manage an entire world from everybody's perspective, especially if you do third person omniscience, and that's what my next book is. And so, like, I'm writing from all these different points of view, and and so when you have so many different points of view, you have to take on their personalities. And so sometimes I think to myself, yeah, they're gonna lock me up.
I love
Um,
that, by the way. That's what my second book that's coming out in August is that point of view. And
yeah,
I'm an old school reader, like school, so I love that point of view. And people are like, that's not a romance point of view. And I'm like, Sandra Brown, OG Sandra Brown, my girl, that's what she wrote, and that's what I read. And I'm like, it is romance point of view. Like that's what you want. But no, I agree with you. And I always people like well, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's characters. I'm like, we have people talking in our head 24/7, and then you get into their mindset, and sometimes you're just like, ooh, but you know it's you in there. Like it's something in you that's like, what is this character doing?
yeah,
Where did I come up with that?
yep. Our Google searches would put us on an FBI watch list somewhere. I'd say
Oh yeah,
I recently finished the first draft of Shadows of Atlantic City, and it's written in first person singular, but that's because it's a mystery. Um, and Kingmaker was written first and second person, or first and third person, and Fury is third person omniscient, and there's a lot of characters to it. So, Coffee Crate Connect says I had to cut 2 scenes from my book because my husband was like eyeballs. He's like, that's a little much for this story. A person was caught breaking and entering for survival reasons, and the guy that caught her was on the dark side of the moon, so to speak. But ultimately, it was too dark for this book. I don't think there is such a thing as too dark. I think you ought to just, if that's where it's going to go, that's where it's going to go.
and you'll find readers. You're 100%. Like I've stumbled into some of the like dark
Oh,
side of
yeah.
romance, like Midnight Black, like ooh. And I couldn't read it. I'm like, this isn't for me. This isn't my cup of tea. But I'm like, there's 100 other million people out there that will read it, like for sure, and they'll devour it because it's why not, man?
Yeah.
Everybody's got some. I mean,
Yeah. Um, Anywho, if there's any questions you'd like to ask, it's 7:54. Figure we can give people a few minutes to ask Sarah some questions. I have no idea what the hell is going on outside, but it sounds like somebody's beating up somebody else.
My kids are definitely like, they're trying out for WWE upstairs, and I'm like, oh cool, it's 9 o'clock and you guys aren't sleeping yet.
I really need a like soundproof my door. That'd be great. Doesn't help that my dog will take her dog toy and smash it up against the door repeatedly. Or against the baby gate that's outside separating the bathroom, so it sounds like she's running a cup across the bars of their prison. Puppies are fun. Anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can ask before we wrap this up. And for those of you who are watching, Sara Burton's books are in the link in the description down below. I also have the link to her website, where you can buy, if I remember right, you have your book available and it's an autographed copy directly from you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So instead of little kids playing outside all over the neighborhood, that's why. So you don't have to go the Amazon route. You can buy it directly from her on her website. You have that store there. You're planning on putting all your books up there, right? Eventually.
But yeah, at some point I will.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Also, I need to point it out, but your blog is a little outdated. Your book is out. You have a few posts there that need to be updated.
I adjusted that today,
All
actually. So you're
right.
probably on there first, because yeah, I'm really bad at this internet like thing. So
This internet
but yes,
thing is a
update
pain.
it. I did update that today. I know I caught that. I'm like,
Okay. And you can find you on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok as Sara Burton _writes. And I have that also in the video's description if you want to check out her TikTok, which is a lot more what I do. Coffee Crate Connect says, going to hop off to work on some revisions. My husband said the book needs a glimmer of hope. Which, considering the overall story, I agree, but I am keeping a copy of the original version of I wrote note to self, glimmer of hope. I try, like, I'll highlight something that because I use Readsy, the book editor, and so I'll make a comment that this needs a little bit more oomph. Thanks for hosting. You are very much welcome. I guess we can wrap this up. It was awesome having you on. You're doing awesome things. I do love your mental health warrior stuff. If you're interested in reading her blog post, I personally that was the first thing I went to. So the link is in the description down below, and I think we can wrap this up. Thank you for being on, and hope to have you on again.
thank you.
Good luck with your book, and I'll see you next.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.